we're going to be taking a look at the original Bunker Rush of Slayer's Boxer versus Yellow. This was a rivalry that went on for a really long time in the early days. This is post-replays coming out. There was a whole era of StarCraft 1 pros that were very good. Before there were replays, D22 So-So and a whole bunch of other players that we don't really talk about as much. But this era, this is a little bit after the first era of StarCraft 1 where we had like XDS Gur, The Boy, old school players like that. This is when StarCraft 1 was beginning to pick up in popularity, and we actually started to see arenas get filled with pro gamers. Slayer's Boxer and Yellow were two players that managed to make the game really exciting, really fast-paced, and a lot of it came down to the Bunker Rush that you're going to see here. Now, before I start this video, I want to warn you that this video quality is really bad. It's very old. This was uploaded 17 years ago, and I think it's even older than the upload itself, so it wasn't put on the internet immediately. I'm also going to have this muted because there is music that is copyright strikeable. It's going to screw up my YouTube. Just take a look at this monitor for a second here. Big, fat monitor, ones with the backs on them. Before there were mice that had a laser sensor under it, you had to have a ball mouse and clean that out in between matches. I think this is Children's Grand Park, but I can't tell. But this is one of the outdoor venues that's regularly used for StarCraft events. And seeing matches like this early on, as a kid, were crazy. I mean, people were basically saying, okay, can esports be a thing? Is this going to go away in a few years? What is it? I'll put the sound on in just a second. If I remember right when I checked the VOD, they were still blasting music at this point in time. And of course, the maps had not really been, I guess I should say map making had not been figured out just yet. So we've got Yellow looking very handsome here. And they'll go to Slayer's Boxer in a second. Then I'll put this volume on. So this was really when people started to map out build orders. Keep in mind, it's effectively the same StarCraft we're used to hearing and seeing. Excuse me. Okay, so we can... Sorry, this is the same StarCraft we're used to seeing. I was saying hearing because I'm trying to make sure we don't hear any music when we turn this on. And you'll get to see some of the very early build orders that were being used here. And, of course, the creation of the Bunker Rush, which has been in the game forever. We had Bunker Rushes in the last season of ASL. By the way, take a look at this. First depot placement. Why would he make that there? Do you guys know why? Can anybody in chat answer? The reasoning is that it would spot the Overlord that would be coming over here. Yep, you got it. Spot the Overlord on the side. So those were some of the ideas. Now, technically, an Overlord, I think, could pull away from this before it gets spotted by the depot. And I'm not totally familiar with what map this was. I didn't check early on. You can see, this was, even back then, they had the I think they're called clappers. Somebody told me esports invented these things. I don't think that's actually true. I think that it was conventional sports that came up with these. But yeah, people were going crazy for StarCraft even back then. This might be the map Boneyard. I could be wrong. Just looking at that big skeleton doodad here. And so, at this point in time, even getting a second base up was not easy. I think if you watch a lot of pro StarCraft now, players get everything out pretty perfectly because the game has been mapped out for a quarter of a century here. But here, going 2 racks early on was very common. Keep in mind, NBC game, this was cable TV. No streaming back then. Even getting a VOD was a nightmare. And interestingly, I'll put it on camera once we get a shot of it again here. First hatchery back then was actually made over here. This is before they had proper natural expansions. So if you guys can follow my mouse down here, this is where the first hatchery would be if you wanted to mine. But back then, they weren't really aware that you had to have a precise sized opening in order to make the game fair. So a lot of Zerg players made their third hatchery to begin to make sunken colonies to actually hold their entrance. Now for the Terran, excuse me, 2 racks was basically the common opening. By the way, look at how packed this is. I don't know how well you can see this, but it is just a sea of chairs out here. Every PC cafe in Korea, people were playing StarCraft. My God, look at that. Just completely packed. You got a banner for Slayer's Box over here, one for Yellow on the other side. And Slayer's Boxer was one of the first players to really figure out the bunker rush, to do it effectively. It was one of the first things we saw in the meta that was mapped out pretty nicely. Because we knew that all Zergs had to expand, so this created an opportunity for the Terran to come out and try to do this rush. Now, people didn't know how to control the units as well. By the way, if you've been following the early days of StarCraft 2, this was also part of StarCraft 2. This was a more rare thing. But this was the big SCV pool. So we knew Slayer's Boxer was known to bunker rush, but this was one of the first moments where he pulled all the SCVs. Which is kind of a crazy, exciting moment. And it was moments like this that really made StarCraft so palatable to a mainstream audience, was these crazy moments like this. Look at that. Blocks the drone with the Marine. So even back then, people were good at these little micro tricks. I think he blocks... No, does not block this one. Excuse me, I'm trying to click on it like it's a replay. One thing to remember is that a creep colony has 400 HP. When it finishes, if it turns into a sunken colony, it has 300. So if you get it down to 100 HP or less, when it finishes morphing, it has 1. You'll see him take advantage of this. I think it is with this bottom right sunk over here. And I'm going to be ready to mute this just in case music starts blasting. So see this one down here? It's about to finish. Boom. 1 HP killed off. Drone drilling had not been perfected back then. You can hear people screaming and going nuts. And this was one of the, in the very early days, one of the most memorable, crazy moments in StarCraft was seeing rushes like this. This is also an interesting moment with decision-making. He knew not to just sit here and kill the hatchery. He knows, okay, he's lost a bunch of drones. We need to go for the killing move. I think anybody who's played StarCraft has had that experience. Do I actually just go into the main and try to end this, or do I try to keep my lead and shut him down? But I guess, obviously, with an SCV pull, you need to just go for it. And look at this. He gets the block over here. The drones are pulled to try to come in here on the side. It's not going to happen. We're going to have GG in a second. To this day, Slayer's Boxer and Yellow will still have these big matches. Big appearance fees for them to come down and try to recreate this moment. There it is, GG. So crazy moment there. And you got to remember, this was right when this was growing in popularity, being on TV. And I think one of the reasons why StarCraft had such a success was because you could have games that would be that crazy. Excuse me. Games that could be that short and that crazy back then. With a lot of the new RTSs that are coming out, a lot of people say, okay, well, we want to make the game safe for new players. We want to make it so you can't die right away. But I think it is undeniable that if you have a game where something that exciting can happen that early, that can completely turn the game on its head, it's going to be fun for viewers. And I think it actually is fun for new players, too. I think we all had that experience playing StarCraft growing up where either we got rushed and died right away, or we pulled a rush off and got to end the game before it even started. Anyways, thank you for joining me while we reviewed a little bit of StarCraft history there with Slayer's Boxer and Yellow. I'll be reviewing more old games, some of my favorite strategies, some of the craziest comebacks, stuff like that. And we'll be getting ready for some new RTS games as well down the road here with Zero Space, with Stormgate, with all this other stuff that's coming out. By the way, go to tastelessthreads.com to find my merch. This is an APM shirt right here. We've got a whole bunch of other cool stuff on there. And, of course, please be sure to like and subscribe so I can get more of my videos out into the algorithm so more people can find them. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.